Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Crunch. Rebecca and Patrick here, just doing what we do on Tuesdays at noon. Thank you all for joining. You know, it's an exciting time to be in Washington, D.C., where we live. Certainly lots of stuff going on. It's been an interesting couple of months. But I was speaking at an event last week, and Patrick and I were talking about this earlier, about sort of uncertainty and the event I was speaking at last week was really talking about what organizations do with AI. And it was interesting because it was a pretty uninitiated audience to AI. So we had some really, really interesting questions and conversation. But it led us to the topic of skills and thinking about how do organizations sort of prepare for the future from an AI perspective with skills. Yes, you have lots of skills. You do. Good job. But what we found is that only 13% of organizations are ready for AI when it comes to skills, in the sense that they don't have the sort of skills taxonomy, that understanding, that profile, both from a cultural perspective and a technology perspective, to be a skills-based organization. So how do you plan for change and the kind of disruption that AI is going to create if you don't have your skills sort of in order? Is certainly one of the things that Patrick and I have been thinking about. And thinking about that in the terms of how do I plan my overall IT strategy moving forward? How do I think about skills and resources, what adjacencies I have, and where I may need to find those skills? I thought it would be great to have my friend Dave Rowe come on from Rimini Street to talk a little bit about their business, what they're seeing from a skills perspective, and how AI is really helping them to drive innovation for customers. Dave, welcome.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And hello, Patrick.
Well, thanks for coming on, Dave. I know you and I have known each other for what feels like a million years. But for folks who maybe don't know Rimini's business that well, can you just kind of talk a little bit about what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. And really excited to get a chance to talk to you and everybody today. You know, Rimini Street's been around. Actually, Rebecca, you talk about a long time we've known each other. It's our 20-year anniversary, believe it or not.
That's right.
This September 20. Yeah, it's super exciting. And, you know, Rimini Street's, I think, most well known for providing, you know, and being the leader of third-party support for enterprise software.
Sure.
And the way to think about that is, you know, you can take your car to the corner mechanic for service, right? You get a higher level of service, better value from an expert. And that's really what we do for enterprise software like Oracle and SAP. We replace software vendor annual support. Traditional pricing is half of what you're paying them today. All your bug fixes, your tax and regulatory updates, everything you need to keep running that car for an extended period of time. And the beauty of our model is that you don't have to do those big, expensive upgrades and migrations just to stay supported. We will support organizations for a minimum of at least 15 years and even longer. In fact, we just announced support for all SAP releases through 2040. So that's what we do. And we've built this, you know, market, if you will, over many, many years. In fact, not you, but there were even some analysts back in the day that said, how are you going to do that? You can't do this. You didn't build the software. And here we are, nearly 6,000 clients signed to date. We've saved customers nearly or a little over $9 billion to date in maintenance fee savings and avoided upgrades. So yeah, I feel like we've accomplished a lot and given clients a lot of value over 20 years.
I like the local mechanic versus car dealership metaphor, but let's be real. I mean, you guys are global. This isn't just your local mechanic.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, when you start supporting multinational organizations with operations and on every nook and cranny of the world, you end up building support operations everywhere. So we have a global support infrastructure, engineers on the ground in every major region of the world, you know, language skills, technical skills, and actually a big support infrastructure technically to provide support, you know, to follow the sun around the world. So yeah, no, we're very global. In fact, if you compare us and our size to other organizations that might have systems integration skills, we're far more global than many of those orgs just because of the business that we're in.
Yeah. You mentioned skills. I mean, certainly a part of the appeal for your for your support services, being having those engineers that actually know the account, that know the profile, that sort of thing. But as you talk to customers about filling skills gaps, particularly as some of these people who are running these systems age out, ultimately, how are you thinking about kind of taking advantage of third parties to manage that skills gap? Or do they even have a good sense of what it is today?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of angles to the skills issue, which is a real concern for a lot of CIOs that I talk to and work with.
Sure.
Rimini took an interesting approach to the model of support, and I think it relates to the skills issue. We took the engineer that provides the service and fixes the toughest issues, and we took them out from the back office behind, layers and layers of escalation, and we put them on the front line delivering the service, actually taking the call from the customer, interestingly enough. I mean, sometimes even the relationships are so close and they're a part of the team, they actually just clients call on the mobile phone number of the engineer. That's the kind of relationship. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes a part of their team, right, in a lot of respects. And as we support, Oracle, SAP, other applications, I mean, listen, you and I have been in this industry a long time, right? As well as a lot of our compatriots, and some of them are retiring. Many of these folks are aging out, if you will, right? Yeah. And they're, if I'm getting out of school, I'm not signing up to learn ABAP or, to learn SAP necessarily from the bottom up. Right. So we provide, in terms of a skills gap or filling a need, we can obviously amortize the investment of skills across many clients. So it helps us build teams across even arcane capabilities. It's hard for a company to do that across all the different aspects of all the technology applications they're running. The average, larger organizations running 300 plus applications of some sort. So how do you manage that? How do you have skills? So you've got to have trusted partners that you work with, right? Either like a Rimini for applications you want to turn over support for, or even now managed services or other capabilities. But there's a lot of different kind of ways to go at that. But I think you got to have some partners as an organization to fill those gaps.
Yeah, so really being able to keep these systems up and running beyond what skills requirements I may be able to meet internally. But you guys are also talking about doing a lot of disruption and enabling customers to do that. And I think that's one of those things that people don't necessarily think about when they think about a third-party kind of support organization. But you're talking about driving innovation around what may be your existing ERP or other application footprint.
Yeah. Listen, we, as you know, right, for many years, all we did was support, right? The best support in the world. All this savings we're freeing up for organizations. But it's interesting, right? For many years, we didn't really help our clients savings into driving innovation more quickly. It was almost like, here's your savings, let us know how it goes, right? Yeah. And so on customer demand, we've expanded our capabilities dramatically because, a very smart CIO once told me, in giving me advice right here at Rimini Street, he said, Dave, listen, CIOs and their teams don't have it all figured out. You've got to take all the experience across all the clients and thousands of clients you have and help us understand what are the right steps forward. What are our options? How do we evaluate those things? Give us some roadmaps that we can help evaluate. So Rimini Street built out a whole set of capabilities, around managed services and consulting capabilities and security and interoperability to help organizations through this, including road mapping capabilities. And so to simplify it, we kind of have 3 pillars of solution areas now, Rebecca. It's support, optimize, and innovate, right? And so the first 2 pillars, you kind of make better what you have, run it efficiently, and free up funds. And in the last pillar, you figure out how to spend that effectively, invest it into driving innovation more quickly. And the beauty of that model is it's self-funding. You actually can deliver the innovation you need all within your existing budget because of all the opportunities for freeing up savings and resources. So that's our model today.
And on the innovation side, where do you see folks focusing or prioritizing their efforts today? I mean, I know a couple of years ago, mobile was hot, right? Where do you see them saying, whatever funds we're saving, we want to innovate? What are the top areas for them?
Yeah, and by the way, it's an interesting time, right? You were alluding to this in the in the introduction.
Yeah.
Times are changing, right? With tariffs and cutting of costs in federal and other areas, and I think IT is in a really unique position. As got all these different technologies coming at us, right? You and I have talked about this a lot over time.
Yeah.
And IT is in such a strong position to make a difference in the business and business performance. And, I was thinking about this the other day as I was reading an article from McKinsey, right? That they did a study in high performing organizations with high performing IT organizations deliver, 35% higher revenue growth and 10% higher profit margins if you have a high performing IT org, which is pretty dramatic. And the one metric they found in terms of IT productivity that mattered the most was time to market. So getting solutions to market, driving quick, agile solutions that the business needs and can drive an impact makes a difference. And so the areas that our customers that we get asked every day about, obviously AI is at the front of every conversation we have. Automation. I think data and visibility and analytics continues to be, top of mind. Of course, data is critical to AI. So these are the kinds of topics we get into every day. There's a lot of functional pieces to craft and pull together, but it really, how do I kind of pull it all together and drive AI value? Plus, listen, there's an AI imperative. I mean, this. The boards, the CEO are pounding on IT to deliver AI innovation. Aren't we done yet? Have we deployed it? Kind of like cloud, a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
I'm curious about, often we think of AI as being one of those areas that can automate a lot of the kind of things that we're talking about, whether it's code remediation or simply creating and delivering new applications, right? That AI can automate a lot of sort of the IT task and IT workflow. How do you guys think about that internally from your own kind of support perspective? What's it going to do to your business, and how are you helping customers understand it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, right? Because our differentiation in many respects is expert resources at the point of service, delivering the best service level possible,
right?
And driving resolutions that are of a high quality in a very short period of time. And we're really good at it. Interestingly, for years, we've been using AI to help connect the dots between a particular issue a client is having. And for example, which expert in our vast company is able to best address that issue and getting them to the point of service within minutes. Right. So we use AI to do that and have sped up, response times and service resolutions, by 23%, for example, on that specific use case. So we're using it very directly. What we're not doing, interestingly, is using it as a form of, kind of stiff arming clients or saying, let this AI or this approach try to solve the issue for you. There may be places where that's valuable, but we're very much about getting the expert to fix the hardest problems in enterprise software, and collaborating with the client to do that. So we're trying to figure out how to use AI to connect some dots to make that more efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the expert service is such a key differentiator for you guys against sort of the more traditional kind of body shop approaches. Yeah. That I would think that there's got to be a very fine balance between when a customer is okay having AI help them solve a problem, or when it can just be an accelerator to get to that expert.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think you'll see us deliver it and manage it in a thoughtful way. But I don't think anything replaces, the expert that's fixed that sort of an issue, for 20 years. And the issue has very specific challenges that it's just difficult to automate. Though AI is getting smarter and smarter every day, right?
And smarter.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I want to go back to something you said a minute ago about public sector. Obviously, being on this coast where I am, very tuned into kind of what's happening in the public sector. But you guys certainly have a lot of clients sort of at the state and local as well as Fed level. If you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing there in the dynamics in the market.
Yeah, no, for sure. And listen, the public sector's, in challenging for a lot of different parts of the world. Here, like DOGE has canceled or frozen, millions in federal contracts, and there's a lot of change happening. I think a lot of agencies are being pressured to reduce spend, through a lot of different methods, right? Some coarser than others, I guess.
Yeah.
Modernization's important, in many cases. But I think there's a consistency across industries. There's just a basic resource allocation issue. I mean, we're spending a lot of money in public sector as well as other industries on just keeping the lights on, just maintaining current operations, Rebecca. I mean, you and I have talked about this for years. And I think what you're seeing is this drive to try and figure out a way to shift some of that money to other areas. Now, we may not all agree in the public sector how to spend that money, but certainly in the private sector, it's about getting it to innovation, right? And driving more value and shifting it. I think, roughly in round numbers, IT groups spend about 90% of their IT budget on keeping the lights on, right? Maintaining current operations. And that's only 10% left over for innovation or kind of making things better, driving business impact. That we got to shift that you got to get more money over to innovation. And that's kind of Rimini Street's charter, right, is doing that. So public sector, I mean, we are helping, as you know, organizations all over the world, in the UK and all over the US and in Asia, deal with this within the public sector. And, I think but it's consistent with what we're getting asked in the private as well. How can I shift funds and do more value, create more value with it?
It's not a US unique situation, nor is it a public sector only problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all over the world. Again, it's a resource allocation issue in a lot of respects. Because public sector, just like private, they're getting the same AI pressure. They're getting the same, performance pressures in a different way, but they've got to figure out how to just be the disruptor, right? Not disrupted by some of the different activities that are out there.
So I know that your tagline at the moment, the being disruptor and not disrupted.
Yeah.
What does that mean for Rimini customers? What kind of things are they thinking about from a disruptor?
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I think a lot of organizations, in my experience, and you certainly here at Rimini, have kind of followed the software vendor path, and it can be a disruptive path. Certainly right now with some software organizations like SAP, right? They're asking customers to go on a pretty disruptive, re-implementation of software. And I hear every day that, from customers and from prospects that just don't want to go through that. It's painful. If you look at some of the surveys, Rebecca, why are organizations doing in this case, an S/4HANA migration? It's because support's ending. They don't have a choice. It's not ROI. It's not because I'm getting all these newfangled capabilities, because frankly, those might be years away in this migration process. And so our position and the position of a lot of our clients is, how can I go disrupt my business, my industry, rather than being disrupted by what software vendors and other vendors are doing? Yeah. And so that's, we kind of talked about this earlier a little bit. That's the capabilities we've now built out around support, optimize, innovate. We've kind of built that into a Rimini Smart Path methodology, 3 simple steps to get you there, so that you can, self-fund these AI, these automation, the workflow, the analytics and the visibility you want across your org, self-fund it within your existing budget. That's what we mean when we talk about be the disruptor, not the disrupted.
I know we've talked about SAP and Oracle a little bit, but you guys have really expanded your portfolio between ServiceNow, Salesforce, Dayforce now.
Yeah.
A lot of different application footprints that you're supporting. How do you think about sort of prioritizing resources and how do you decide what to add next?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because, traditionally we've looked very hard at the different markets that are out there, evaluated the supportability, how big is it, access to engineering talent, right? The whole business case.
Sure.
And because it takes millions of dollars of investment to open up some of these markets and get the skills in place across every major region around the world, right?
Mhm.
And that was our model for many years. But it's interesting because I would get asked every week probably, hey, I'm getting a request from a customer or a prospect. Can we support this Microsoft product? Can we support Infor? Can we support? And we often said no because we hadn't yet done that business case and hadn't yet created some of those areas of assessment. So what happened was I finally, working with the team here, we came up with this new capability. We call it Rimini Custom, but
Uh-huh.
the whole idea is how do we say yes more to customers and prospects rather than saying no? So with Rimini Custom, we can very quickly assess an area, do a bottoms up assessment of what it would kind of cost us to deliver the service, deliver a proposal to a customer in a matter of a few days or short weeks, and very quickly ramp that up. And you see the value of that because when Broadcom acquired VMware and changed all the rules around licensing and moving it to a subscription and rebundling, so you ended up with products you may not want and what you had to license or subscribe to now. And you ended up with organizations that had a 3x, 10x, or even more of a price increase effectively,
Yeah.
and it was really the same software. And so we were asked, hey, can you support me on VMware from some customers? We quickly figured out, yes, we can do that, provided proposals. And we have, I can't get into the exact numbers, but it may be one of the fastest growing areas of support we've ever had,
Huh.
actually. And that started as Rimini Custom and is now a formally supported product. And we ask now, if you're a new client, if you're a prospective client, bring us your list of all your software and we will come back to you with proposal on what we can support. And then we can do managed services and help you rationalize and go on this support optimized journey that funds your innovation strategy. So I'm excited because I actually stood up in front of our sales kickoff a couple of years ago in a yellow suit with yes plastered all over it. And it was, hey, we can say yes now more frequently to customers. And that's a good thing.
I want to go back to the last time we saw each other IRL was actually at Knowledge.
Yes.
For ServiceNow. And I know that's a relatively new kind of piece of the Rimini portfolio from a consulting and support perspective. Can you talk a little bit about how that's going?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've and in the early days of Rimini, right, we were such a disruptor to these enterprise software ecosystems. And the big software vendors had such a stranglehold on those ecosystems. We didn't have a lot of partners, right, in those early days. But now there's been so much change in enterprise software. There's all these new capabilities and these new providers of software that are game changers, and using AI, for example, in some really unique ways. So there's some just strong partnerships we've built now over the past few years. And ServiceNow is one of the most important because, our view is that, ERP is changing dramatically. In fact, in 5 or 10 years, Rebecca, ERP may not even exist anymore, certainly as we think about it now. Right. As I mentioned earlier, right, companies have 300 plus applications. They've spoken. They need more than just one monolithic set of modules from one vendor.
Yeah.
And, we've solved a lot of the integration challenges. We've got these integration fabrics. We've got data fabrics. And so what ServiceNow does is they help us bring to a customer an enterprise AI platform that provides a unified set of capabilities across an organization, across silos of disparate technologies and software that can integrate business processes, automate it, AI enable them, give you single pane of glass visibility across the organization. It's very, very powerful because it's interesting. What I hear often from customers is, I love my software, right? I mean, SAP and Oracle and these companies have built wonderful ERP and related software applications, right? Especially core transaction systems.
Yeah.
But sometimes here, it really works for me. It supports almost all my business needs, but the UI is getting a little tired. I'm having trouble, with some other, user expansion and connecting, getting AI connected across different systems. That's where ServiceNow comes in. They're that enterprise AI and business automation platform across the top. And it's very powerful. We're deploying this today with customers over the top of their SAP systems, for example. And you may have seen, I think we talked about Apps and Pharmaceutical down in Brazil, who had a S4 HANA Rise migration contract on their desk, came to one of our events, learned about the ServiceNow option, the ability to, for Rimini to potentially support them longer and run their existing software and then put ServiceNow over the top to achieve their AI and other automation goals.
Yep.
And they were able to automate 70% of their processes pretty quickly that required heavy manual intervention. I mean, quick, in weeks and months, not years that these migrations take. So I think very powerful capabilities and quick kind of agile sprints that I think deliver. And actually the CIO, I was just down in Brazil, Sao Paulo last week. Yeah. And the CIO was giving a presentation and he said, a really interesting quote. He said, "Now the business knows what we're capable of." And I just loved that quote because it showed quickly how they were able to prove value to the business. And now they're heroes and they're getting more money to work with and besides the savings from a Rimini. Yeah.
And whoever thought that Bill McDermott and Rimini would be working together to disrupt SAP?
How about that, right? When he used to run SAP, right? And here we are. And it's exciting. Our CEOs between the two companies are pretty tightly aligned. They've got some big, outrageous goals, and we're excited to work with ServiceNow every day.
What a difference 15 years makes, huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, we just have a few minutes left, so that means it's crunch time. Yes, crunch time, when Patrick gets to ask the questions. Are you ready? You ready? Yeah.
All right.
So Patrick wrote these down before, but I'm going to ask them for you. What talent would you like to have that you don't have?
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't mind being able to juggle, I suppose. Can you juggle? I don't, maybe fly.
I don't know. I feel like I'm a professional juggler some days.
Oh, yeah. Aren't we all? Yes. Maybe fly a Top Gun plane, Rebecca. That would be pretty cool, I think. But
okay.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most overrated virtue, Dave?
Overrated what? Sorry?
Virtue.
Yeah, I are any of the core virtues overrated? I think some are more important than others, right? Yeah, I really think that having empathy for others and just being thoughtful and trying to help take care of others is the most important. I'd put that at the front and everything else behind it, and that's kind of how I think about it.
With that in mind, what living person do you most admire?
Living person, it's an interesting question. Probably in a lot of respects, my father-in-law. I've been very lucky, Rebecca, throughout my life to have some folks that, close to me and my family that have helped influence me, growing up on a farm in Missouri. My grandfather, for example, right, but who unfortunately is no longer with us. But my father-in-law has sort of exhibited a lot of the same attributes as my grandfather, right? Just the empathy for others, caring, trying to take care of others, great care and providing for his family, and wanting to help others be successful. And what's better than that? right? And then helping others achieve their goals.
I always love it when somebody's answer to that question is a member of their family. I think that's particularly, it's a great answer. And finally, Dave, if you could come back as any person or thing, what or whom would you be?
Let's see. You know, I would say if I had to pick one, you know, may we live in interesting times, right? You know, I think, and there are some parallels to today in some weird ways. I think Churchill's an interesting person who achieved amazing things, demonstrated incredible resolve and resilience in the face of uncertainty. You know, did it, and I value those traits, right? I think at Rimini we've been very resilient, have had a lot of resolve. I feel some parallels, if you will, there. And yet at the same time, he was funny. He had a sense of humor and a wit, and was just a bit of a character, right? And he had a pretty eventful life, if you've read some of the biographies.
He saw some things and did some things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, hey, I think that's a great piece to wrap today. Dave, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks everybody for tuning in to listen today.
Thank you.